Okay, so far we have discussed about the nature of the state till Mahajanpada period, I guess so, right? So as we have seen in Mahajanpada period, we that could be seen, or that could be perceived in two different ways, because during that particular period, at one side we find the Gan Sanghas, and the another hand we find the monarchical states, right? And as you can understand, there were some basic differences between these two, because Gan Sanghas cannot be categorized as the proper state, whether the monarchies could be categorized as proper states, right? So what kind of problems were there in the Gan Sanghas? Because as I just told you about the lineage system, right, and through which the Kshatriyas became so powerful, and basically there we find only two, and as we have already discussed about the social stratification, which is very important for this evolution of the state system, and somehow that social stratification was completely missing in those Gan Sanghas. And as this social stratification was missing in Gan Sanghas, and that is where we find only the Rajput, the Kshatriya community, and apart from the Kshatriya community we find some common men, right? So normally the lands were completely belonging to the Kshatriyas, and rest of the people, they were just serving in those land, right? And that is why it could not be categorized as proper state. And on the another hand we find the monarchical states, right? So in the monarchical states there were some differences, I mean, and somehow these were different from the Gan Sanghas. And now in what way the monarchical states were different from the Gan Sanghas, right? So the first thing, that which is very important, that the social stratification which is coming to there, right? So as far as this social stratification is there, so that I have already discussed, that could be discussed in two different lines. So one is the one in basically with this economic perspective, and one with the social perspective, right? So as far as this economic perspective is there, so definitely in economy there's a major change which is taking place, that is definitely surplus, right? That surplus is coming, and definitely the reasons behind the coming of the surplus was very obvious. The coming of iron, the fertile zone, good rainfall, right? So these are some of the reasons somehow which produce the surplus. And with the coming of this surplus, we find a distinct category which is coming to the society, which is known as the Gehapatis, right? That Gehapati was supposed to be the owner of the land, right? That is very important, or we can say distinct change which is coming, because with this we find the notion of private property is coming. And once the notion of private property is coming, so definitely security became one of the prime importance for the society. And definitely now they became, because once these kind of the notion of private property is coming, so with the notion of private property, the insecurity, with the notion of private property, the notion of insecurity is there. And I hope you people must be knowing about the reasons for the disputes, right? Because in society you find numbers of disputes. Society में तो झगड़े होते हैं ना, होता है नहीं होता है? होता है. Disputes क्यों होते हैं society में? Why do you find the disputes? There are three reasons for the disputes. Land, right? Unmovable property, right? The second is movable property. That is, what is this movable property? It might be gold, it might be wife, right? Wife is also ये symbol of the movable property. तो normally हम देसी भाषा में बोलते हैं कि जर जोरू और जमीन तीन चीज के लिए लड़ाई होती है, ठीक है? And so yes, this is true that these are some of the reasons for the disputes. And once this insecurity is coming into the society, and that is why this idea of social contract could be also implied here, right? The emergence of the state in those janpadas, which are basically following this monarchical system, right? There this social contract, the concept of social contract is working, because once people are feeling insecure, in that case they became ready to pay something, right? That was in a form of tax to the state, right? And definitely, as I told you, once the surplus is coming, so here you can imply this Marxist theory properly, once this surplus is coming, so whenever the surplus could be seen in society, different sections of society always try to capture that surplus, right? So here onwards that dispute started, and finally there is a group which somehow succeeded in capturing the surplus of the society, right? And on the other hand we find those who could not capture the surplus, they became ready to pay, or they became ready to transfer this surplus in a sense of, or in a form of tax, right, to the state, right. So this is one of the major change which is taking place, and somehow it gave birth to the state system, right. So this is one of the thing. Apart from this, in the notes also I have discussed that the nature of the monarchical system was somehow different from the Gan Sanghas, because it was not necessary. I mean, Kshatriyas should be the ruling community. That idea was never followed, and in fact today we are going to discuss about the society. So there we are just going to discuss ki whatever the Varna system or the ideal laws of Varna was never followed in society, because in most of the cases we find that the things or the exceptional cases were present, and as far as this ruling powers were concerned, right. So there we never find this idea was properly implied, because in most of the cases those who were capable of forming a proper state, right, or empire, they were never falling in the category of Kshatriyas. So this is the another important category in the monarchical systems, important system in the monarchical Now one more aspect that these people have started, that also I guess I have discussed in the last class, these people were ready to do the sacrifices, right, and that is where we find the references of different yagnas which were normally performed by the ruling communities, such as Aswamedh, Bajpayee, Rajasuya. These were some of the proper popular yagnas which were performed by them, and at the same time the dakshinas have been mentioned with that. So as we know ki the rituals are always mean of social exchange, right, and that idea could be implied here also. And through this, what happened actually, the kings were just trying to legitimize their rule in one hand, and on the another hand the Brahmins were just trying to grab the surplus with the help of, or with the support of the yagnas, right. So that is the another feature. That feature is completely missing in the Gan Sanghas, right. This particular period is also known for the agrarian expansion, right, and that is again this phenomena could be seen in monarchical states rather than in Gan Sanghas, right. So in what way you find that the agrarian expansion was taking place? Do you have any example as such through which you can prove that the agrarian expansion was taking place? Urbanization is not the I'm just talking about the agrarian society, right, and agrarian society is definitely contradictory to the urbanization, because urbanization means the secondary economic activities. This is one of the inherent feature of urbanization.
But agrarian expansion also means there will be surplus and surplus directly.
That's true. So I'm just asking about the references for the agrarian expansion. ठीक है, और कुछ बताइए. ऐसे ही एग्जाम्पल्स या ऐसे ही सोर्सेस इवैल्यूएटेड ढूंढते हैं आपकी कॉपी में, आपकी आंसर स्क्रिप्ट में. आपने लिख दिया कि अग्रेरियन एक्सपेंशन था, बट देयर माइट बी देयर शुड बी सम प्रूफ फॉर दैट. सो व्हाट इज द प्रूफ थ्रू व्हिच यू कैन प्रूव दैट देयर वाज अ अग्रेरियन एक्सपेंशन? राइट. Fine, you are referring Arthashastra. So I think you must remember one more thing. In Arthashastra, the whole provision or the complete system has been discussed, through which the wasteland could be converted into cultivable land, right? Because he has discussed about the barren land and what is the right process through which they could convert this barren land into the agricultural land. And there we find the references where the Sudras have been allotted the land, right? And as it has been considered that Sudras are the hardworking people, so somehow these people would be capable of clearing the land, made it cultivable, right? Could make it cultivable. So this is one of the biggest example. The next example is the Satpat Brahman. Mind you, whenever you have to write anything about the expansion of agriculture, you have to write about the technologies which are coming to the agriculture. So one text which is very important, that is there is a Brahman, Satpat Brahman, right? So yes, we find numerous references even in Satpat Brahman for making this for this agrarian expansion. Third thing, the Buddhist sources, right? So the Buddhist sources are also talking about this agrarian expansion. So that was the another feature that could be discussed here. The fourth thing it is about the tax collection machinery, right? So what was this tax collection machinery? I just told you it is interrelated with the help of surplus, right? As the surplus was grabbed by the ruling community, with the help of that surplus, they used to maintain a army, right? And with the help of this army, they used to collect the surplus. So the things were interrelated, and this particular channel got established during this period, and that is why the tax collection became one of the easiest thing as compared to the previous period in this particular period, and that is where this machinery definitely contributed a lot for the development of a. One more text that I missed, that was the Panini's Ashtadhyayi, right? Panini's Ashtadhyayi. What is the period of Panini's Ashtadhyayi? Yes, around 4th century BC. Normally we consider that this text was finally compiled during that period, and in Panini's Ashtadhyayi also we find, right? So these were some of the important areas that could be discussed if you are writing any answer on the monarchical state. So these are the points that must be discussed. Now come to the next section, that is the post Mauryan period, right? So in post Mauryan period, there might be some more aspects that could be asked in this period, that is about the Mauryan Empire. So what kind of possibilities are there of the question? Definitely the possibilities are like the centralization or the nature of centralization in Mauryan Empire. So I think this is a very popular idea, and you all must be having a fair idea on that, right? This particular issue has been discussed very properly in the book of Bhupinder Singh also. So you just see there in the book of Bhupinder Singh. So there you might get all the points for this the centralized character of the Mauryan Empire. But find one thing you always remember, the way we have accepted the Mauryan centralization, that point has not been accepted anymore, and that is why end your answer writing by writing this there was no as a centralization. And whenever you are writing about this centralization of the Mauryan period or in the Mauryan state, you talk about the juxtaposition of the sources, right? Initially Arthashastra was perceived as the sole text to write the or reconstruct the past of the Mauryan Empire, but later on it has been perceived that this was nothing but the ideal treatise which was talking about the statecraft and all, and definitely the same idea could not be implied. The second point that I told you about the juxtaposition of sources. So now whenever we try to inquire about the Mauryan Empire, apart from this Arthashastra, we simultaneously put this Ashokan inscriptions, and now we try to equate the bureaucracy which has been discussed in the Arthashastra with the Ashokan inscription. Do you find any reference of the Mauryan bureaucracy in the Ashokan inscription? And if we find the references, in that case we accept okay, this might be practiced during this Mauryan Empire, otherwise we are not accepting it. The third source which is very important is Indica, but unfortunately Indica is not writing about the every aspect of the Mauryan Empire. Definitely some of the very good details are there, but somehow these details are missing in this Indica. That is why we are not using a lot as far as this particular issue is concerned. So this is one of the aspects that you must remember. So whenever you are writing about any answer, so you must discuss about the nature of the sources, the way we are using the sources, and the third thing that you are supposed to conclude the answer in a way this idea is not accepted anymore. In the recent historiography, the idea has got completely changed. Now come to the post Mauryan period, right? So as far as the post Mauryan period is concerned, so as you know the post Mauryan period, what is the, if suppose I am asking you one question, in what ways, in a single word, can you define the nature of the state during the post Mauryan period? Feudatory, right? Anything else? That term cannot be used as it is. Why? Because this system was not known as the feudal system, right? So it would be better. Your idea is correct, but it would be presented in a better way just by saying decentralization, right? That would be a better term, because the feudatory system is coming somehow it is slightly late in the 4th, 5th century AD, right? So that is why don't use this term. Although you just, your idea is correct, because somehow the feudatory system is more similar to this Kshatrapa system, right? So the decentralization is the main theme, right? But as far as this decentralization is concerned, so Okay, fine. I mean, I'll come to this decentralization. Let me first discuss about some other things. So, as this Mauryan empire disintegrated, so we find now some new empires or new states are emerging, and now that this could be categorized as per different zones. Like in the northwestern part we find some of the foreign invaders are coming, and Indo-Greeks, Sakas, Parthians, and Kusanas. Right. In the North India we find the Sakas. The Sungas and the Kanvas, right? And in the Deccan we find the Satavahanas. So this is more or less, more or less a brief picture of the India, except this extreme south, right? So this is the picture. But somehow, except this Satavahanas and except this, Kusanas, most of the states are proving the idea of decentralization. But this idea cannot be as it is implied, in Kusanas specifically and Satavahanas as well, right? Because as you know, the Kusanas were ruling from what was the area which was under the Kusanas? Well, of the part of Afghanistan, some certain parts of Afghanistan till from there to
Mathura, Patna, the maximum extent was still Patliputra from the Oxus River.
yes. So it has been supposed ki what was the capital of Kusanas? And there was another capital of Kusanas as well. That was Puruspur. That is falling in Pakistan only. Sorry, Peshawar, Puruspur था. Puruspur and Peshawar एक ही है, अलग अलग नहीं है. Yes, that's correct. That Mathura was the second capital, right? I was just checking your information, and right. So there were two capitals which were frequently used by them. So this is one of the things that could be discussed. Now let us talk about and I think there should not be any doubt in the sources what we are using for reconstructing the history of Kusanas, right? So what kind of references or the sources we can mention here? Coins, of course, right? What else? कॉमन आइडिया भी लगा दीजिए. Sculptures. Sorry, Milindipano. Yes. So simply you can talk about the Buddhist literature. As you know, this period was known for the prominence Buddhism, right? And as they were patronizing Buddhism, so definitely some of the prominent books were also written here. And as you know, for the expansion of Buddhism, Kusana Empire was very much responsible. So of course, it was a golden period for Buddhism in the postmodern period, and that is why some of the Buddhist literature are giving numerous detail on this particular empire or the state. Acha, one more thing that must be discussed here. This is the first period when we find empire, or is basically not empire exactly, a state in a remote period, apart from the states that I have discussed just now. Can you tell me about that? In this particular period which is under discussion, right, we find a discussion, or we find a mention of a state in a remote area which was initially or earlier, which has not been discussed. Yes, Kalinga. So why actually I'm mentioning this? Because this is again one of the example for the agrarian expansion, right? So till now I just told you that this is the period when people are, this process of expansion is still going on, and now they have reached up to the Kalinga, and the first dynasty that has been discussed in that region is Kharvel. Now come to the nature of Kusana state. So suppose you have to discuss about the nature of Kusana state. So I think you must be knowing numbers of facts regarding this, but let me tell you one thing. Initially it has been supposed that the nature of the Kusana state was the Kusana state was like a centralized state, as like the Mauryan Empire. So initially this particular idea was there, and it has been always considered that this was a highly organized centralized state, right? But later on, as you can understand, now we have denied to accept the feature of centralization even in Mauryan Empire. So definitely we have outrightly denied the fact in the Kusana Empire was centralized in any mean, right? So now people have started talking about the decentralization, right? So as far as this idea of decentralization is there, so in what way we can prove the decentralization in Kusana? क्या क्या पॉइंट्स लिख सकते हैं अगर हम डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन हमें प्रूव करना है तो? Okay, fine. So you can write about the Chhatrap system, right? Okay, there was a system prevailing which was called as Chhatrap system, right? And as per the Chhatrap system, what we find actually, amount of land has been given to them, right? And they were ruling on a particular territory, and they were paying regular tribute to the king, right? And these were nothing but the military commanders, and these were under the totally under the control of the king, the Kusana king. And that is why it is it cannot be equated with the that system which is known as feudalism, right? Because in that particular perspective, feudalism was slightly different. So okay, fine, this is one of the point that could be discussed. What else? Well, not exactly. और क्या कर सकते हैं? आप पढ़ते सब हैं, लिखते कम हैं आप लोग, इसीलिए नंबर नहीं आता है. Guilds. How the guilds were showing the expressing the decentralization? Well, when we are talking about the decentralization, so it is more about the political control. It is not about the economic control, right? So that is where the point is not very much valid here. I hope you remember the titles, the heavy titles which were carried by the Kusana rulers, right? So that is the another point. Why they used to carry the, these kind of bulky titles with them, like Sahanu, Saho, Devraj, Dhiraj, right? So these were some of the titles which were carried by them. So what was the inherent meaning of these titles? Small kings under them, right? So basically it is all about the Chhatrapas. Basically those people who are under the king, they have also started using the prefix such as Raja, right? Maharaja. So अगर उन लोगों ने राजा इस्तेमाल करना शुरू किया, so this is nothing but showing the equality between the Chhatrapas and the king. So that could not be accepted somehow, and that is why what happened, they have started accepting the extended bulky titles. So these titles are showing that now somehow with the help of these titles they had to differentiate, right, with those Chhatrapas, right? So this is again one of the major example of the The title such as Devputra was also taken by the Kusana rulers. Kanishka himself has taken the title of Devputra. So it is a sort of different concept of divinity, different concept of kingship, right, which is coming with this title. What is this different concept of and this is coming from कहाँ से? Greek words से. Actually this is coming from China, right? China, I hope you might have studied about the Ming dynasty and the Han dynasty. नहीं पढ़ा होगा आप लोगों ने सर. Confucius पढ़ा है कभी? पढ़ा है? कहाँ पढ़ते Confucius? History में तो नहीं है यार Confucius. Ethics में पढ़ते हो. Yes, that is correct. Ethics में आप पढ़ते हो Confucius. Confucius, he was supposed to be the contemporary of Buddha and all, right? And that was the period when he was existing in China, and Chinese society was much advanced as compared to the rest of the societies in terms of at least these kind of things. So this theory was basically practiced in China, and they started following this theory, where they declared themselves as the son of God, and that is where they were having the divine rights to rule over India or the territory which were being ruled by them, right? So that is the another important point that could be discussed here. What else that could be discussed in the nature of the state of the Kusanas? Right? Okay, we find the proper administrative system, right? And in that administrative system, the guild was also playing very important role. Although we find the references of Visayas and Gramas, these are some of the administrative units. But apart from this, we find the references of guilds also, and they were helping the state in administration. So this is again one of the distinct feature in Kusana Empire. The another thing which is very important or prominent feature in the Kusana state, that the Kusanas used to patronize almost all every religion which was there, right? They tried to patronize Buddhism, they tried to patronize Jainism as well, right? This is the period when one of the major changes coming in Indian history in terms of religion, that is, sorry, Bhagavatism, right, or the Vaishnavism, right. So that is the another movement which is taking place in India, and fortunately this is again patronized by the Kusanas, right, because they were the patrons of this year. Now the question arises here ki normally till now we have seen, till the period of Kusanas we have seen ki normally state used to patronize a particular religion, right, but here we find that the state is trying to patronize different religions or sects. So what is the idea inherent in this? Secular तो कोई नहीं होता यार. Exactly, the idea of legitimation, right? वो foreigners थे, वो Indians नहीं है, ठीक है? Indians होते तो उनको accept कर लेते, but as they, it was a sort of big challenge for them to get the legitimacy from the Indian subject population, and that is why whatever the religion sects they found, they started patronizing them. कि somehow they wanted to get the legitimacy from every single entity, single community, and that is why this is one of the inherent feature or the unique feature in the Kusana state. Right, that's it. I mean, these are some of the points that could be discussed in the nature of the Kusana state. Now come to the Satvana state. Now, what are the sources for reconstructing the Satvana history? Sorry? Coins, of course, very important source. What else? Inscriptions. Right, there were so many inscriptions that could be found. And why the Satvana inscriptions are so popular? What is the distinct feature in Satvana? Land grants. Anything else? Exactly. These were the earlier or the earliest inscriptions which were purely written in Sanskrit, right? ये PT का information है, नहीं भी लिखेंगे तो चलेगा. I'm just right. So yes, inscriptions, right? And you talked about the coins, right? Yes, again very important source. But apart from this, the Jaina and Buddhist sources, right? Because I hope you remember the way these people have tried to patronize this, Buddhism specifically, right? And the Amravati school of art is one of the major example of this, right? So that is where some of the Buddhist and Jaina texts are also dealing with this history of Satvana or the details of the Satvanas, right? So these are some of the sources. Now the another debate regarding the Satvana history that I think you might not have read somewhere, there is a concept of secondary state, right? Have you ever heard about this term secondary state? नहीं सुना कभी? सुना है किसी ने? या फिर Mauryan transplant? Right. Exactly. Initially it has been simply accepted, this idea has been accepted that Satvana state is nothing but the secondary state or the Mauryan transplant, right? It means that whatever the point he just said, yes, that is correct. What exactly happened, it is nothing but the expansion of the Mauryan culture to the Deccan areas, and with this expansion what we find that the agrarian practice has also expanded, and just because of that we can find that there was nothing, they were simply trying to copy the Mauryan style, and that is why it is sometimes said as the Mauryan transplant or the secondary state. But I think or the historians also discuss later on that this idea could not be implied in Satvana state. Why? Because evolution of any state cannot be simply a copy. Right, that idea is implied even in the IVC also. Normally for the evolution of IVC we say it was, there were two popular ideas. These are the pre and the early ideas. The pre-IVC and the, have you ever heard these terms, and can you differentiate between these two? Pre-IVC and early IVC? सुना है? क्या डिफरेंस है दोनों में? Not shifted, migrated, right? Okay, fine. He is saying right. Pre is basically showing the discontinuity between the between the early IVC cultures and the mature phase of IVC, right? Whether the early is talking about the continuous, no, that evolution of IVC or the evolution of the mature phase of IVC was nothing but the the continuous progress of the society, right? So that is where this pre-IVC was is one of the popular idea for the evolution of IVC, pre and early. So these two different ideas. Through these two different ideas, we can discuss about the evolution of IVC. Later on, as this idea has been negated, and you might have numbers of points for that, right? कि हम नहीं बोल सकते कि it was the pre-cultures we find just before the mature phase of IVC, and people have now started emphasizing on the early IVC. So as far as this pre-IVC's concept is there, so normally people talked about the migration of either idea or the people from the Central Asian region or the Mesopotamian region, and they are saying that either the ideas migrated or the people migrated, and just because of that we find the developed and urbanized culture such as IVC, right? But that idea has been negated, and there is a popular theory of Romila Thapar, right? What Romila Thapar is saying कि if you are intending, right, if you are willing to urbanize yourself, then only you might be influenced with some other ideas. If you are not willing to urbanize yourself, in that case definitely you won't be urbanized. Are you getting my point? It's slightly thoda complicated hai. Simply I'm just trying to tell you in a simple term. She is saying ki if the IVC people, they were having some trade linkages with the Mesopotamian people. They saw a developed culture there, but it doesn't mean that just by seeing them they urbanize themselves. Why? Because there were two important points. That just by seeing any particular culture or any particular society, you can't urbanize yourself. There are some prerequisite conditions for the urbanizations, and without that, even though you are willing to urbanize yourself, this is practically not possible. So the same idea could be. Now did you get my point or not? Right? It's a very simple thing, right? So those conditions, I mean definitely out of these preconditions, one is the surplus only, right? I have discussed in the last class also. So the same idea could be implied even in Satavahanas, right? Now people are saying that okay, just because of the expansion of the Mauryan culture, it was not possible for the Satavahanas to emerge as a proper state, because until and unless those conditions that I have discussed, like the stratified society, the surplus, the Satavahanas could not convert themselves into a proper or full-fledged state, and that is where this idea has been negated. And now they are just trying to study the nature of the Satvahana state with the background of socio-economic changes which are coming during this particular period, right? So as far as this socio-economic and political background is concerned, so what kind of points could be discussed here, right? That in this particular period, in the Krishna Godavari delta, we find that the expansion of the paddy cultivation, right? So the first idea, which is related to surplus, that idea could be proved from here कि yes, with the help of this expansion of the paddy cultivation, what happened कि now they could generate the surplus. So this became one of the important platform on which they could they could build their state, right? The second thing, the Satavahanas were trying to promote the trade and commerce, right? Because by this time we just find that the ports which were there in the western coast, right, these are gradually becoming popular, right? And as these ports are gradually becoming popular and this trade was somehow patronized or protected by the Satvahana rulers, so this also became one of the major source of income for the Satvahana rulers, right? And as this different source of income is coming for the for the Satvahana empires, so somehow it got the stratified society in Satvahana state, right? The Satavahanas again, they tried to patronize both the communities, specifically the Brahmanas, right, and the Buddhists, right? So the same idea which we have seen in the Kusanas, that idea could be implied here also. They were just trying to get the legitimacy. They have patronized the Brahmins. Why? Because they wanted to get the status of Kshatriya, because normally they were not considered as Kshatriya, as they had to get the status of Kshatriya. So that is why they did like that. But still the society the Buddhism was very much popular, and that is why they kept on patronizing the Buddhism as well. And I think this could be connected with the land donations, right? Why these people have started this system of donating the land to the Brahmins. And I think in the last class you remember that in what way this idea became so popular in South India, and I think you can understand why this phenomena and how come this phenomena became so prominent in South India, and that is where temples started playing major roles in South Indian polity, society and economy, whether this feature is completely absent in North Indian society. This question was asked also last year, I think, about the role of temples in the That's it.
There was a question about the temples about the military experts of the Khavila.
Of the question?
Military experts of Kalinga.
कब पूछा यार?
So I was just going to ask you a question.
I mean, I don't remember this question was asked in last 5-6 years. I don't remember so, because for last 5-6 years may be possible, and this is a hardcore factual detail, right? Unfortunately, I am not having any information as such right now, right? So I think there's chances are very less that these kind of questions would be asked in the present scenario, because they have completely stopped asking these kind of questions. Now come to the next phase, the politics from 3rd century AD to 6th century AD. Now, what are the basic points or the major points in this particular period? What kind of major change which are taking place during this particular period? The period which I'm talking about, right? What is the major change? क्या-क्या important चीजें होती है इसमें? It will be easy to understand. Sorry? Okay. Right. So that is the point that actually I wanted to discuss. In this particular period we find the consolidation of Brahmanism, right? In what way the Brahmanism got more consolidated? Because the first thing that this is the period when we find that the mostly Puranas and the Smritis have been written down, right? So as the Puranas and Smritis have been written down, so this was nothing but the codification of the Hinduism, right? And as Hinduism was codified properly, and that is why this is the period when the Hinduism became stronger as compared to Buddhism and Jainism, and that is why you can see one thing, now their inclination towards the Guptas were having their inclination towards the Brahmanism, because this is the period when they started this temple making styles. I mean they have started making the temples, and they just patronize those Brahmins, those prominent writers and some other things. I hope you remember the Navaratnas and all. So this is one of the important feature during this particular period which we are talking about, which is under discussion, right? That here this Brahmanical Puranic ideology became dominant, and that is why these rulers were trying to get the legitimacy through this Brahmanic and Puranic ideology, and that is why they have started patronizing Brahmins a lot, right? So this is one of the important feature that could be seen, right? The another thing, that Dharma Shastras, right? Dharma Shastra have been compiled during this particular period, right? So the same idea, the codification of society or the codification of Hinduism was taking place in this particular period. Right, that is one of the important point. And the third important thing, again I'll say the same thing, the agrarian expansion, right? Because now they have reached up to the Bengal area. So this is again one of the valid point or important point that could be discussed here. Now, as far as this nature of Gupta state is concerned, so here what kind of points that could be discussed? Now, the idea of which was used in Kusana Empire, the idea of divinity, right? That the kings are having the divine rights. So there, in this particular period, we find the maximum use of this idea, because this idea was initiated by the Kusanas, but the maximum it was utilized maximum by the Gupta rulers, because as you can understand again, now just because of this land donations, we find the decentralization of powers, right? And mind you one more thing, this land donations which we find or see during this Gupta period was slightly different from the land donations which were taking place earlier. And can you differentiate between these two? Law and order in that particular place. Okay, fine. Accepted. Yes, he is saying right, because here in this particular period in North India we find the concept of Brahmachatriyas, right? So now what is happening, the land donations which were normally given in South India, these land donations only included the monetary rights or the economic rights over the land. They were not having any or exercising any as such right over the people who were living on that area, and just the produce, it was the produce or the the tax, the amount, it was collected by the official bureaucracy, and it was given to either temple or the Brahmin. So that was the system which was prevailing in South India. But with the coming as we are reaching up to this Gupta period, that nature of the land donation got completely changed. One of the major change which is taking place here, initially it was only given to the Brahmins, but for the first time we find that the lands have been, the people have started donating, basically the rulers have started donating the land to the bureaucrats as well, right? The first change. The second change, sometimes as I told you, the Brahmins, as now they are not only transferred the economic right or the monetary right over the land, at the same time they were transferred the judicial and the administrative rights, right? As they were transferred with this judicial and administrative rights, so that is where they have now started playing the role of a Kshatriya, right? Because ruling was the work of as per the Smritis, it was supposed to be work of the Kshatriyas, and as these people have started performing this task, that is why they are in future they are known as the Brahmachatriyas, right? So in that way we can say the land donations are slightly different, and finally we can say these kind of land donations somehow generated the decentralization of power, and as it was highly decentralization of power, that is why the Gupta rulers were also depending up to the same idea which we have discussed for during this Kusanas, right? Because they just wanted to show their they just wanted to maintain the hierarchy with the help of the bulky titles and the extended titles. That could be proved with one more example. This is for the first time when we find that the rulers have started writing inscriptions, and in those inscriptions they are writing about their expeditions and some other things, right? Before that we don't find this particular phenomena in Indian history, but as they have started doing this, why? Because they had to emphasize, or they had to just prove their importance in the society. So that's the another important thing which started during this particular period, and that is again related to the decentralization of the state. The another thing is the hereditary successions, right? Although it was practically it was never followed. जो लिखा है टेक्स्ट में, प्लीज. Well, urban decay is such a point that is not accepted anymore, right? Because initially they were just trying to prove that this particular period was supposed to be a dark age, right? The colonial historians, but later, with the recent researchers, we have completely denied that during this Gupta period we find any as such decline of the urban centers or the trade and commerce, right? Immediately after this Gupta period, definitely we have certain signs as the Roman Empire, the Roman trade is declining, and we find that some of the trading centers also decline. So we accept this point for the post Gupta period rather than for the Gupta period, right? So that is the point that you always remember. I was just saying something, I just जो भी हमारे टेक्स्ट में लिखा है वो कभी प्रैक्टिकली फॉलो नहीं होता था, जो भी है, चाहे आप वर्ना सिस्टम बोल लीजिए, चाहे आप जो ये हायरार्की का सिस्टम है, सोशल हायरार्की का सिस्टम है, बिकॉज यू नो इफ विल टॉक अबाउट द वर्ना सिस्टम, सो यू नो the way this Varna system is a reality in our society, in the same way the social mobilization is one of the biggest truth in our society, right? How many times they have discussed about the Varna system? I mean we can find maximum numbers of cases of social mobility. I mean I hope you might be having numbers of example. This is one of the questions that could be asked also. अभी नहीं पूछेंगे शायद, अभी के इसमें तो बहुत बड़ा वो हो जाएगा. Social mobilization के आपके पास हैं कुछ वो evidences?
That he is a Brahmana by Varna, but he is a trader. His father is also a trader.
Okay. Guptas? Not Kshatriyas. Okay, fine. Right? Anything else?
And there is an inscription about some silk weavers moving from Ladha on Gujarat coast to Mandasore, changing their profession.
Changing their profession, right. So these are some of the minor examples that you are talking about. Like suppose if I am supposed to talk about this, so I think I should begin with the Mauryas only, right? The Mauryas were not Kshatriyas, right? Even though they got the status of Kshatriyas. But mind you, one more major change.
One macro point which would be that lot of students say that unlike say in Western countries where land was limited, in the Indian subcontinent there was a lot of land. So even if peasants shifted to other areas, they could find other professions, even new lands to cultivate. They were not bounded under certain territorial limits. So that.
How can you connect this with the social mobilization? This is definitely a mobilization that point is accepted, and this is in fact one of the major trend in Indian history, right? That the peasants were always free to move from one land to another land, and in fact anytime they could move to a different land, they could clear the land and they could make it cultivable, and they'll start cultivating the land. This is one of the major trend in Indian history, and that is why the Indian feudalism. This is also one of the major difference between the Indian feudalism and the European feudalism, because it was possible in Indian feudalism and it was not possible in European feudalism, right? So your point is valid, but I cannot somehow connect it with the social mobilization. Social mobilization, here I am simply talking about the Varna mobilization, right? So initially you can find one trend. This could be asked in a form of question also. So let me discuss this. Look, what is happening? Initially you can find the individual mobilization, of the in the Varna system, right? Suppose somebody became the ruler. Somehow somebody became the ruler, so definitely he or she can change his varna just by paying something to the Brahmins, right? Brahmins can do anything. वहाँ जाना है बनारस, उधर थोड़ा सा मैनिपुलेट करना है और आपको मिल जाएगा. तो ये केसेस तो बहुत फ्रीक्वेंटली हमें देखने को मिलते हैं. एंड इन फैक्ट एज यू नो कि द मौर्यंस, राइट, द सुंगास, कन्वास, सातवाहनास, द गुप्तास, किन्हीं के नाम ले लीजिए, कुशाना, सकास, पार्थियंस, कोई भी क्षत्रिय नहीं है इंडिया में, और बाद में सभी देव नॉन एज क्षत्रिय, राइट? और पहले लोअर क्षत्रिय, फिर बाद में प्रॉपर क्षत्रिय. दान जैसे जैसे बढ़ता गया वैसे वैसे स्टेटस बढ़ता चला जाता है, राइट? So this is one of the thing, but this particular thing got changed later on, basically in the early medieval period in a way. कि initially, as I told you, we find the references of the individual mobilization, but later on we find the mobility by the whole group or the community, right? Like again you can quote some examples like the Kayastha community that was supposed to be a Sudra community, but somehow they managed to get the clerical works in the Mughal court, and later on they upgraded themselves in much closer to the Brahmana, right? So we have later Rajputas, again one of the major example of the the social mobility by the whole community, right? Rajputas were supposed to be the peasants, right? They were normally the peasants, and as this Chhatrap system and the decentralization of power and the feudalism, they all were going on, right? So somehow they grabbed huge amount of land, and later on they declared themselves as rulers, right? Kshatriyas. And of course the same thing again repeated, कि once they became the ruler. So once you became the ruler, so now it's not a big deal to get the status of Kshatriya. They just paid some huge amount of money to the Brahmins. The Brahmins went to Banaras and they changed the, right? It happened very frequently, right? So I hope you are getting the point in terms of history और UPSC कि अगर ऐसे भी क्वेश्चन जो है ट्विस्ट करके पूछ सकते हैं, तो सोशल मोबिलिटी के ऊपर भी एक क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है. So in fact this question was asked in a different way, like the Varna system was never followed practically in Indian society. ये शायद एक बार पूछा भी है UPSC में. So there you are supposed to discuss about these points. So the ideal things were never happening in society. न्यूटन का लॉ भी है कि तो होता ही नहीं है. Sorry, can you repeat? Yes, again, yes, your point is very valid. With the, at one side they are writing about the marriage laws, right? Okay, this is the anulom, in that way the marriage should take place. But at the same time, they are talking about, or they are writing about the exceptional cases. Ki if the marriages are taking place in this way, then what is going to be happen? Like the anulom marriages and the pratilom marriages, right? So whenever they were codifying this marriage laws, at the same time they were writing about the exceptional cases as well, right? So they have already accepted ki the people are going to violate these kind of systems. So that is why they were already writing about this. Yes. Yes.
In that point, someone linked to sort of showcase that there was enough mobility in the sense that it was not linked only to the Varna system. They were exterior.
Yes, accepted. You can write about that as well, right? That is again one of the case of the mobility only, right? So I think this is also one of the question. I mean, possibilities are there. This question could be asked. That is, I was just discussing this. That's it. I mean, these are some other points are also there. These are not that much important. Written in the notes, you just see it there, right? So that's all about the state evolution of the state system in India, right? Any other question that you have in your mind, you can ask to me regarding this evolution of state.
Like if we go back to the middle of the first millennium BC, my question is whether the agrarian expansion would have even taken place if iron would have been discovered without using iron.
No, it was not possible in a sense. Why? Because once you are talking about this, mobility or the migration of the people, or as they are shifting from the, shifting towards east, right? So what is happening as you are moving towards east? So there is a complication which is coming with this. The complication is that where you find the good rainfall, right, and the soils are very fertile. In that case, definitely you can find the thick forest, right? With that too, with the thick trunks, right, tree trunks. That could not be cut down without the help of iron tools, right? So they were capable of moving, or they were capable of shifting in the lower Gangetic plains in 6th century BC. So that was facilitated by iron only.
But then we don't have any, this is RS remark, but then we don't have any evidences of iron torches, not much evidence is happening from that.
During what period?
The middle of the first millennium BC.
6th century BC. No, we have evidences for the iron tools. That is the significance of that period. Who told you that there was no evidences of iron?
Starting from the lower Vedic age, 1000 BC as we come towards 6th century BC.
Right.
So whether it was really iron only which revolutionized everything, iron was the major factor.
Again, now this is a question that you are asking. This is a debatable question, right? If we'll ask personally to this question, in that case, definitely I'll say that I believe in this theory.
The revolutionists are believing that iron only hastened the process.
Exactly.
It didn't make things the most.
Exactly. Now the importance which was given, to this idea by the Marxist people, in the same fashion, the revisionists or some other people are not emphasizing on the same idea. They are saying that there might be a major role which was played by iron. In fact, Romila Thapar is also saying so. But we cannot say that this was the only or the sole reason for the expansion of society or evolution of distinct things in society. These were coming because of iron, so this is not accepted, right? So you can just mention this particular thing in a line, but you have to emphasize on the role of on the role of iron.
Whether this was a sole criteria, we should most
don't accept it as a sole criteria, right, or the sole reason for the for this particular development. But even though emphasize on the role of iron, because that could not be negated, that could not be ignored, right? That's very important. Anything else? Yes. Right.
So could we sort of as a latter point put that in as well, that sort of states during this time were known for their sort of patronage of culture, art, architecture, and it could be seen as a cultural state more than sort of a traditional centralized economic state.
Well, just now I told you, while dealing with this Guptas, I just told you that this is the period when they tried to patronize a lot this Hinduism, and that is the period when, not Hinduism exactly, Brahmanism, right? So this is the period when the Brahman Dharma is taking the shape of Brahmanism, right? I mean, the concept of ism is coming here, and definitely it was nothing but showing the consolidation of the religion. And in this particular consolidation, definitely the Guptas were playing major role, right? But it was a sort of a vice versa relationship between these two, as they were patronizing the Brahmanism, and in the similar fashion they were getting the legitimacy to the Gupta rulers. So this is definitely one of the point which is related to this, and I have discussed briefly. I have discussed because this is a popular idea, you must be knowing, right? And that is one of the point that must be written in your answer.
So they patronized Brahmanism, but they also like renovated the stupas. So can that point be included to show that they were sort of
well, look, the way we have implemented this idea or implied this idea in case of Satavahanas and Kusanas, in the similar fashion we cannot discuss this idea, right? Definitely Guptas were trying to patronize Buddhism also, and in fact I must say you one thing, whatever the stupas that we see, right, these were not developed by the Mauryans, right? Most of the stupas or the outer construction of the stupas were done by the either post-Mauryan rulers or the Guptas. This is again one of the possibility of the question. Ki normally it has been supposed ki post-Mauryan rulers, the post-Mauryan period was the revivalism of Brahmanism, right? And they all tried, they all were just trying to emphasize on the Brahmanism, but unfortunately we don't find any as such example, because post-Mauryan and the Gupta period was, I think, golden period in terms of Buddhist architecture and the Jaina architecture. Because whatever the development that we find in Indian society in terms of Buddhism and Jainism, that was taking place during that period only. And either you are talking about the eastern side, if you are talking about the eastern side like Bengal and Bihar area, so the temples or the shrines which were developed in for Buddhism, these all were developed by the with the help of this either Gupta rulers or the post Gupta rulers. So in fact, one thing we must say or we must remember, they were never biased to any particular religion. They always kept on patronizing all the religions simultaneously, and this phenomena could be seen only in the post Gupta period, when some of the Gauda ruler or Gauda dynasty was one of the dynasty which is which could be considered in this direction, right? Or the Hunas, right? Apart from this, we don't find any as such example who were completely biased to any particular religion. Mostly we find they were secular. Right. So next topic that we are going to do is the society. Now, as far as this society is considered, right, or concerned, no, let us something talk in general, right? So what exactly I'm willing to talk, that as far as this reconstruction of the social history is concerned, so there again historiography is playing a very important role. So in what way the historiography is playing very important role in the reconstruction of social history? Suppose this is the question which is coming, in what way the historiography playing major role in the reconstruction of social history. So what would be your answer?
Historians said that economic changes cause change in society.
Okay, fine. What else? Okay, fine. You guys are beginning with the reverse side. पहले लोग सोशल हिस्ट्री लिखना ही क्यों शुरू किया लोगों ने? Why they have started writing the social history? Right. Okay, fine. Now you're coming to the right point, right direction, right? Of course, this colonial writers, they have started writing firstly about the society only, and I think you know the reason behind that. So initially you can find two distinct categories or two distinct groups which were writing about the Indian history, and they always tried to fit the Indian society in the European model, right? Why? Because they just try to see the Indian society with this European model, and that is by two prominent groups which were writing about Indian society. These were the utilitarians and the orientalists, right? So as far as this utilitarian and orientalists are concerned, right? So of course they were trying to fit their ideas. So the first thing they, you know, they have just written about the Indian society. They were not having any sense of history, and the first book which is very related to very close to history writing was the राज तरंगिणी कलन. ये भी एक जो है illusion है या एक rumor है जो उन लोगों ने spread किया. रीजन बहुत साफ है कि वो बताना चाहते थे कि इनके पास तो सेंस ऑफ हिस्ट्री ही नहीं है, ठीक है. तो इस तरीके की कुछ there are some such developments. So anyways, as I am telling you, they just wanted to fit their own model, right, in Indian society, and of course it cannot fit, right, because these two societies are distinct societies. So there I was just talking about two distinct groups, orientalists and the utilitarians, and they all were trying to just find out the negative aspects of Indian society, and that is why some concepts became very popular with the Indian society, like the static society, right, like the despotic society, right. So these were some of the popular ideas which have been discussed by them, and that is why for many years, till 1940s and 50s, people always believed that Indian society is the static society. The idea of Oriental despotic, the despotic society, it became so popular that even Marx has also said that Indian society, or definitely he talked about the Asiatic mode of production in a way like a despotic society. So even some of the Marxist historians, or even Marx himself, has called the Indian society in the as interpreted Indian society in such a way. So that is why it is so important that till 1940s and 50s people have a sort of different interpretation of Indian society, right, and a wrong interpretation of Indian society, but that idea got changed with the coming of the Marxist historians, because now they have started seeing the Indian society with a different perspective, right. So as this is important, and definitely whatever the points that you guys have raised here, after that you can talk about the Marxists, they got a different view to see the changes in the society, the first thing. Then somebody talked about the subaltern history writing, right. Now they have a different way to see this subaltern history, and I think this idea again could be implemented throughout the Indian history, like if you are talking about the ancient Indian history, right. Just give me 2 minutes. Write these kind of things, so you can begin your answer writing this. Okay, there is a historical change, or change in the historiography. So you can write any answer related to social issues of ancient India or medieval India with the background of the historiography, right? Now, definitely the Stone Age society, right? So as far as this Stone Age society is concerned, right? So in what way you can, the first thing, that what are the sources which are talking about the Stone Age society? Suppose you are writing an answer, so what are the sources that you must mention there? Sorry? Cave paintings, bronze sculpture. I am talking about Stone Age society. Stone tools. Okay, fine. What else? She talked about the cave paintings, right? And stone tools, factory sites. Okay. Megalithic remains, right? Basically the burials, right? Okay. What else? Pottery. Okay, fine. But do you find that with the help of these kind of sources we are able to reconstruct the past or reconstruct the society, Stone Age society? नहीं. फिर हम पढ़ते कैसे हैं उसके बारे में? Exactly. Anthropological studies, right? So this is the major source of reconstruction of the Stone Age society, right? So normally we are dependent over the anthropological sources, and as anthropological sources we study, because this is one of the popular branch of study in the present scenario. And normally as some of the tribes who are which are living in Africa or the islands such as Andaman and Nicobar, we just try to study those sections, right, or those communities, and on the basis of that, in that particular line, we try to reconstruct the past of the Stone Age society, basically the Stone Age society, and even the Neolithic, Chalcolithic societies, because initially there was, again I must say one thing, initially there was a trend ki we used to segregate, we used to study Neolithic and Chalcolithic separately, but now there is no as such differentiation between the Neolithic and Chalcolithic, and that is why even in Upinder Singh, she has included both the part of both the section ages in a single chapter, right, because he has just tried to study the Neolithic and Chalcolithic simultaneously, because yes, there are so many overlapping sites of Neolithic, Chalcolithic. So basically we are just talking about these societies, Neolithic and Chalcolithic. So yes, this is, whenever you are writing answer, you have to refer about the anthropological studies, as it is the best mean to study about this. Now let us come to the society. So as far as the society is concerned, so definitely the anthropological study, through this anthropological study, and basically the cave paintings are the major source to study the Stone Age society, right. Now let us talk about the features of the Stone Age society, right. So what kind of society that we find in that period? Now suppose you are supposed to define about this. So in what way you can define? There are some major categories through which. Settled life, okay, fine. They were not having the settled life, but this is a sort of transformation which is taking place during the Stone Age only, because if from a unsettled life they are moving towards the settled life, right. The first point that you must mention here, the band societies, right. What exactly is the band society? Band. Moving in? Exactly. This number is very important for the band society, right. The number was never huge in the societies, and normally the number which was of course the assumption is around 20 to 25. This was supposed to be the number of the societies, and that is why these are called as the band society. The another reason that we are calling it band society, because they were just moving around, right, in such a smaller number, because there was a use of it. And what was the use? The hunting, right. So normally they used to hunt in a smaller group, they could not hunt in a larger group, right. So it has been said ki at least for the in the period of Paleolithic and Mesolithic, right, they were moving around like a band society, they were living like a band society, and that was the practical purpose of following this system, because they had to hunt. But although we have some such references where so many such smaller groups used to combine on a particular moment, right, and then the strength was slightly increasing high, like 100 or 150. So that was a very rare phenomena that could be seen with the Stone Age societies, but normally they used to be in this much number, and as they have limitation of so many things, right, the resources basically that they were having, right, and just because of that, this is one of the most prominent feature of the Stone Age society, right. Yes, again that is definitely one of the major thing, and I hope this is a very common thing that you must be knowing, that of course as per the availability of stones, right, they used to live in those areas. Now what is the another important point? Egalitarian, which is also known as the proto-communism, right. So this phase is known as the proto-communism. Why? Because it was supposed to be egalitarian society, and of course when there is no as such notion of property, right, so of course it has to be egalitarian. The third important thing is the division of labor. Division of labor. Men and women, right? the men part of the section of the society, they used to hunt, and the gathering is supposed to be done by the women. ये सब हमें इसी से पता चलता है, एंथ्रोपोलॉजिकल स्टडी से ही पता चलता है, कोई भी सोच इसकी बात नहीं करता है, राइट. Although in some of the paintings we find these kind of phenomena, the men are always shown, in the process of hunting, whether the female were always shown in process of, gathering the food stuff and all, right. What else? Can we talk something about the rituals which were followed by them? Community dance, right. Okay. And what kind of beliefs were there? Religious belief? The first and the most important thing is they used to worship the ancestors, right. This is one of the important criteria, and apart from that, the fertility cult is one of the major theme which was prevailing there, prevailing in those Stone Age society. And nature worship, the third thing. Now this idea got changed during this Neolithic societies. Now what kind of change could be seen in the during this Neolithic society, Neolithic Chalcolithic societies? Start of agriculture, right? So once the agriculture has been started, so some points are very common and very obvious as well, right? Yes, sedentary life or the settled life, right? And once with the practice of agriculture, some more things could be discussed, such as the kinship ties, right? That is another important point. With the settled life, the kinship ties are developing, right? And why this kinship was so important? For agricultural labor, right. One more thing, I think you might have studied this particular issue in Upinder Singh about the domestication, right? Very beautifully it has been written. So there are two aspects that could be discussed, how come the domestication took place in Indian subcontinent, right? And what are the proponents for the domestication, right? What are the things which motivated them or fueled them for this domestication of both the things, food grains and animal, right? So there are various theories for the domestication and some example through which we can prove this domestication. So these are another aspect that could be that must be studied. What else could be discussed here? और कोई आइडिया न्यूलिथिक सोसाइटीज के लिए? Sorry? Communication. Well, communication is that much important during this Neolithic phase, at least, because definitely they have invented the wheel. but the trade and commerce as such did not start, right? Because for the trade and commerce, one thing which is very important, that is the specialization, right? Without specialization, the trade and commerce cannot take place. So I mean, communication is not that much important.
Pottery for storage.
Pottery?
For storage of grain.
Sorry, I'm not getting you.
Pottery for storage of grain. Storage of grains.
Storage of grains, right? But how it is important socially?
Because pottery was used for burial also.
Pottery was used for burials. Point तो निकाल ही लेते हैं आप लोग.
And also different types of pottery indicated very nascent beginnings of some sort of social hierarchy or to say they is completely valid.
Yes, this point is valid because once they have started using the pottery, so and as this idea could be clubbed with the burials as well, right? So there we can find that some social hierarchy started, right? So this is again one of the major feature of the Neolithic society. Ki, although the notion of private property hasn't come yet, but even though it has been said ki there are some such groups which always try to grab or capture the maximum share of the produce, right? And that is why a sort of hierarchy that started here, right? And so that would be a valid point. As far as the religious patterns are concerned, right? So what kind of change that could be seen here in the religious pattern, or the their belief in the religious system? Normally the things which we find in the Neolithic and Mesolithic period, that kind of things continued, right? So the same sort of thing, like the ancestral worship, right, the nature worship, the fertility cult, the same kind of thing continued. Normally one more thing, that yes, as far as the resources, the surplus is not present, it is we cannot say it is completely absent, but even though the very proto format of political institutions, not exactly the political institution, but some such sort of institution could be seen in Neolithic society, where somebody is trying to regulate the society or govern the society. So these kind of phenomena are also present. So this might be also one of the prime feature for this Neolithic societies, right? So that is all we can talk about the Neolithic societies. And one more thing which is important here, as I have clubbed this Neolithic with the Chalcolithic societies, so once we'll try to study this Chalcolithic society. So this Chalcolithic society is slightly different in terms of the points that we have discussed for the Neolithic. So now in Chalcolithic the things are different. Now what kind of differences could be noticed during this Chalcolithic period? Exactly. So there we have so many examples through which we can prove. I mean, we can talk about the stratified society, because there we find the round houses and the the circular houses and the rectangular houses, right? So most of the times we find that the round houses are at the center of the settlement, and of course it has been assumed that as these round houses we find at the center of the settlement, so that is why it has been assumed that there might be not exactly I mean, we cannot talk about the state system, but even though the system of chiefdom has come into the Chalcolithic societies, right? These Chalcolithic societies were tending towards the urbanization, because as in the case of Inam Gaon, right? Inam Gaon is one of the major Chalcolithic sites. So there we find that the sizes of the settlements were very huge, and as the sizes are very huge, so that is what is happening. And the use of some such stuff, which is also showing about the Chalcolithics here. Which was also showing about the developed society, right? So these are some of the distinct features in the Chalcolithic societies that could be discussed only for the Chalcolithic. So these are some of the changes or some of the prominent features of the Chalcolithic society, right? Next phase is IVC. So as far as this IVC is concerned, now the first thing, as we have to discuss about IVC, so the first thing that is very popular, that IVC is supposed to be the urbanized and the first urbanization in India, right? So what exactly you understand by the term urbanization? Let us first try to decode this urbanization, then we'll come to the culture. Once you're talking about urbanization, right? Right. But definitely the Golden Child has given the 10 features of the urbanization that could be implied in the urbanization or in the second urbanization of India, but somehow that idea cannot be implemented in IVC, right? So that is definitely fit in the second urbanization, for the second urbanization in India. But even though, what are the rough features of the broadly, what are the features of the urbanization? How can you differentiate between an urban area and the rural area? Craft specialization, right? Secondary, I think that suppose you are writing about the urbanization of IVC, you must begin with some major points. Look, whenever you are talking about urbanization, so the most important point is surplus, right? Because there is a relationship between the rural areas and the urban areas, and without the existence of the rural areas, right, urban areas cannot exist, right? And that is why I hope again I would like to recall the Rumila Thapa's theory, that without those preconditions you cannot generate a urbanized civilization or culture. So this is one of the major points that could be discussed. So yes, once the surplus is coming, so with the coming of this surplus, what is happening, now the normally there is a trend through which the urbanization is taking place. I think I might have, those who have joined the my classes before, might have discussed this here. Normally what is happening, in what way the urbanization is coming. Suppose this is a village and there are few fellows living here, like John is there, right, Ram is there, and some other people, Karim is there, and one more fellow is there, as Hari is there, right? So these are the 4 people who are living here, right? SSB में interview मैंने बहुत दिया है, ठीक है. Unfortunately, I was very keen to join defense services, very keen. I appeared for the SSB 7 times, but unfortunately, every time they kicked me out, right? I was not fit, I guess so, for this. So there was a thematic appreciation test. I think you might have appeared for the SSB as well. नहीं कहें कोई. So आप लोग सीधा UPSC करेंगे. I was not pretty sure about myself, and that is why I was appearing for the SSB. कि चलो इसमें हो जाए. Anyway, so there was a test called thematic appreciation test, and there we have to write the stories, and in every story we have to write the name. We have to pick the names from different communities, right? तो वो आदत है अभी तक. Anyways, तो ये लोग इधर रहते हैं, ठीक है. So once these people are living here, and normally what is happening, this is an agriculturist society, so they are practicing, this is a rural culture, rural society, they are practicing agriculture here, right? Now what is happening, definitely some of the changes which are very common. So the one of such changes is the population, the increase in the population. So gradually the population is increasing. So when the population is increasing, so this is a very normal phenomena. Now what would happen, people would start settling in these areas, and the farm would be around the new village, right? So this is a continuous process which is taking place, and now what is happening, once this continuous process is happening, so one change in the population, the another change is technology. So these are some of the changes which are coming simultaneously. So what is the result of this, right? Once this technological change is coming, some irrigation facilities and some other things are coming. So, and this is another process which is going on. So with this, what is happening is somehow the produce is increasing, right? So once the produce is increasing, so there is a result of this increasing produce, and what is the result? Now once the produce is increasing, so now what could happen? That could be equated with surplus as well. So now what could be what should happen? Now some of the people would confine themselves only for only in the agricultural work, whether some of the people would go for the secondary economy activities, right? So this is one of the things. This is a sort of natural process which is happening. And now what is happening? Look. Suppose this is Karim and Hari, they have decided to go for the some other professions, such as Karim has started making the pottery, Hari has started making the chariots, right? So these are the two professions they have adopted. Whether John and Ram continued as farmer, right? So now what is happening? John and Ram has to travel every day from here to here. Why? Because it is very much necessary for the farmers to go every day to their farm. But of course this is not necessary for these two fellows, because they are just looking for two things: market and the raw material, right? So they could get it, the market, they could go for the market and the raw material only once in a month, maybe. I mean, we are just assuming, but this is not true for the the people who are related to the agriculture. And as the distance is increasing every time, that is why what is happening, finally there is a particular moment when these two people have decided to shift here, right? In the same fashion, we find some more people who are having their farm nearby, they just shifted to these areas, and in this particular place only we find those people who are related to secondary economic activities, right? So this is again one of the process through which the urbanization is coming. And actually the Gordon Child is talking about this theory. This is not my theory, right? Gordon Child बोलते हैं कि urbanization ऐसे होता है, and that is why I just told you कि this theory could not be fit in IVC, right? So most of the urbanization are basically, it's a sort of it's a process which is naturally happening, right? So that is why what is happening, now these areas became the villages and the rural areas, and at the center the center became the urban areas. Why? Because now people have started doing the secondary they are involved in secondary economic activities. So that is again one of the phenomena, and I hope you understand in what way the rural areas are linked with the urban areas, because somehow they were just trying to fulfill the requirements of the rural areas like the food grains and all, and in return they were providing some other stuff like the pottery, clothes and some other things to these rural people. So this is a natural process through which the urbanization is coming. So that is why this is one of the inherent and the most important feature for the urbanization. What is the second feature, second important thing? Yes, somebody just now talked about the secondary economic activities. So that is just because of this reason, this is again becoming one of the important reason for the urbanization. What else that could be discussed here? Well, you are telling the same thing. Just by getting the idea, you cannot urbanize yourself, right? This is a sort of natural process through which the urbanization is coming. Whatever you are saying, that might be correct. I am just giving you the example of Delhi, right? Delhi was urbanized at a particular moment, right? And areas like the NCR was rural area, basically in Ghaziabad, in Noida, in some Indrapuram. These were some of the areas normally the cultivation or the agriculture was practiced. But later on what happened, with the this process is a continuous process, right? So this process, after a particular period of time, what would happen, there might be possibility that this would convert into an urban area and the rural areas would shift further, right? So this is the process through which the urbanization is coming. So these are some of the inherent features, but I was just asking about some more features of urbanization. Writing, yes, writing might be. Why writing is so important for in this process? How can you fit this writing in this process? Surplus is there, secondary economic activities are there, so now you need to keep the records of those things, right? And that is why the writing is important. What else? Class consciousness, right? Class consciousness. In urban areas, people are class conscious, or we can say the social hierarchy must be evident in the urban areas. Normally in rural areas, you don't find the social hierarchy, right? Basically it's a sort of economic hierarchy, and I hope you can fit the ideas, these ideas into IVC also, right? The same kind of things. What else? Secondary economic activities we have already discussed. Yes, I'm coming to that point. With the once this process is continuing for a longer period, then with this particular system, one thing is coming which is normally known as specialization of craft, right? That is again one of the important point for the urbanization. Now what is the significance of specialization of craft, right? once you are practicing a single craft for many years, for many generations, so definitely one specialization is coming, right? The another thing which is important factor here, key it is depending up to the availability of the raw materials, right, and the market, right? So if you have these kind of facilities, so then specialization of craft is coming. Once the specialization of craft is coming, so definitely this long distance trade is starting, right? Because if suppose Gujarat is known for cloth making, and some other area is known for some other thing, right? So definitely the long distance trade will start. So that is again one of the important feature. To regulate these kind of things, you need a proper developed administrative system, right? So that is again one of the inherent feature of urbanization. In every urbanized area, I'm just talking about urbanization in general, right? And as I told you, the urbanization in IVC did not take place in the same fashion, right? But somehow the features are similar. Conclusive evidence of in IVC. Right. Look, one thing is pretty sure that without an administrative system, the IVC could not, run. Right. That system could not run without the administrative system. So there should not be any doubt that there was a political or administrative system, existing in IVC somehow, or we can say until we decipher the script of IVC, we cannot write or we cannot know something about that. But definitely it was there. It was present there. Right. So these are some of the inherent features of IVC that you must remember. So whenever you are writing about the urbanization, one more thing that this is very important, the use of metal, right? Without metal you cannot imagine even of a urbanized area or urbanized society. Use of metal. For the first urbanization it was bronze, right, for the IVC. For the second urbanization it was iron, right? So anytime you need a solid metal to support this urbanization, and that is again one of the inherent feature. Now if you want to understand the IVC society, the same ideas could be implied here. Well, look, they were only using bronze, and definitely whatever you are saying, that is true. Why? Because they have some limitation in getting the tin, because copper was locally available but tin was not. But somehow a flourished trade was conducted between Afghanistan and India, because as the tin was imported basically from Afghanistan, and they were having a very good trade relationship between these two. But even though it was, look, bronze is not such a thing that could help you in making the tools and in these kind of things. But even though it is very much possible that without this bronze tools they could not make such a developed or urbanized civilization. So definitely they were using the bronze tools, but yes, it was limited. The use of these tools were very limited. So this is true. And once this decline of IVC is coming, so with that, what is happening? The major reason for the decline is somehow this trade got interrupted, and once the trade got interrupted, now they are not getting access to the tin, and that is why it had to decline. So this is again one of the major theory for this, right? But at what extent they were using this, we don't have any such evidence, right? So as far as this social or the society is of IVC is concerned, so the same ideas you are supposed to write. These kind of society was there, like the class consciousness was there, social hierarchy was there, right? And the same ideas, the handicraft practices were there, specialization of craft was there. So these are the points that could be discussed with the urbanization of IVC, right? Right. So look, now we are left with the economy and religion, right? And some areas are like Vedic society and the society during the Mauryan period and the post-Mauryan, like during the Gupta period. This is left. There's some problem, I cannot continue the class today. So maybe the remaining portions I'll finish in the next next week, basically whatever we are left with. And if we require, I'll take one extra class on Saturday, right? If we cannot finish it in the 3 days, in that case I'll be taking, not tomorrow, in the next week, right? So I'll be taking the one extra class in next week. If we cannot finish it in those 3 decided dates, in that case I'll be taking one extra year, but I'll finish till medieval during this period, right? So now we are meeting on 16th if you guys are coming for writing the test. क्या हुआ सर? I think most of the people are not coming for writing to write the test. Yes, the discussion will be taking place immediately after the test, right? And the paper is slightly tough that I have and I think you must write. Look, one more thing is there, because there are some ideas which I am going to discuss through the test that I am not dealing in the classroom, right? Are you getting my point? अब दोनों जगह डिस्कस करने का कोई फायदा नहीं. So that would be discussed in the through the test only, right? So that is where some of the topics I am missing, that could be discussed through the test only. And in case if you are not coming for the test, so definitely you are getting the video lecture, right? But I'll just tell you to write the test on time. That would be good for you also. इसमें कम से कम जो वेटरन लोग हैं वो तो लिखें कम से कम टाइम. Sorry? Yes, there will be a question of the ma'am. Exactly. The classes are not, I mean, as per the test schedule. The test was different. The classes are just for the value addition, right? So that's it. Don't try to, link the classes with that. I'm trying to finish it, but unfortunately I could not, right? So that is why I just told you that in the next week definitely I'll finish till the medieval period. If I have to take one extra class, I'll do that, but I'll do that, right?
The last point was that there was some sort of multiple related to society.
Exactly.
You are saying some of the list of the evidence from the different kind of burials and potteries.
Exactly. There are. Look, again, I am telling you one thing. Always we are not, using the same source like the archaeological sources for the Neolithic. Sometimes, I mean, most of the times we are using this anthropologically, and that is why in the beginning only I just made you, I made it clear. So it is not, it is not true that all the time we're using the same sources. So just through this anthropological studies also we can say like that. And in fact these kind of things could be known only through the anthropological studies. Archaeological sources never justify these kind of things. Any other question? Okay, then see you.
Sir, can I ask you a question?
यहाँ भी पूछ सकते हैं, कोई problem नहीं.
So just that this way also I asked you this day for yesterday about this women condition question. I was discussing with my friend, and this question came whether women were more vulnerable in ancient society or in today's society, the crimes against women. Because we also know these crimes are because of this thing about power, where the men feel that they have more power over women. In ancient society, the law books were in favor of the higher caste. They could have felt more powerful, and they could have, like, I'm just supposing that they could have committed more atrocities towards women from lower caste. So whether the condition of women, can you comment? It's just like on a side, right? It may not be like that.
Well, this is a completely new perspective that you are asking to me, right? Well, what I really think that yes, it is related to the power relationship, right?
Okay, we can also conclude that technology has made women a bit more vulnerable to today's society. But keeping that technology aspect aside, whether women were in really good condition in the previous society, ancient society.
Well, as far as this, Vedic society is there, because this question came while dealing with this Vedic society only. So I must say you one thing, that definitely once if you are part of the mode of production, right? So you are having some good rights or rights equal to the men, right? So this is happening. But once you are not part of the mode of production, so definitely you are losing your status in the society. This is definitely correct. But while studying this social science, this is such a subject or any subject in social science, you cannot generalize anything. And that is why, you know, we can say one thing, generalization is such a thing which is always killing the sense of social sciences, right? Because if you are trying, and unfortunately without generalizing we cannot study anything, right? Because suppose we are reading about the, you know, Vedic period, so definitely there are many sides of the Vedic period. We can find many you know, different references of the, you know, Vedic society, even though we are trying to generalize the thing. The problem is that whatever we are talking about, this is in you know, line of generalization, right? So this is the thing. But in fact whatever I am saying, once, you know, I mean, it is all related to the, you know, mode of production, but again it is a sort of generalization. But yes, majorly we can say if women is participating in the mode of production, they are enjoying good status. Once they are losing their, you know, a role in the mode of production, at the simultaneously they are losing their status in the society. Now if you are trying to compare this particular thing with the present society, so what I have perceived is this is true in somehow. I have seen so many, you know, families, some individual families. If I am taking the case of individual families, so there I found if both the members are earning in society, in family, in that case they all are, you know, having good power, they all are enjoying good power. If we'll change the case in a way ki the husband is earning and the wife is not earning, she is, you know, she is basically leading a household life, in that case we can find the male part of the society, or the male in the family is, you know, entertaining more power. And even I have seen some such cases where the woman is working, right, and the male is not working. In that case I have seen they are enjoying male power, you know, I mean, more power, right? They are deciding the stuff and these kind of things. But again I cannot generalize this thing, right? So that is what I mean, in that way I can perceive that, I can see this particular thing.
So we cannot really comment whether the status, whether women are more vulnerable
In ancient times. No, not exactly. We cannot say like that. They were more vulnerable, because with the development of society, right? I mean, as we are moving forward, we can find that they are becoming more vulnerable, because always in the previous society, the status of women was good, right? And it became worse during the Gupta period, in terms of history, right?
Sati started basically.
It is not only about Sati. You can, you know, read about this, you can talk about this Manu Smriti, you can talk about some other Smritis, right? Whatever the rights they were enjoying in the earlier period, they all were wiped off, right? And they all went off, right? Now they are not exercising any sort of power. They were removed from, you know, being participant in the yagnas. Now they are not entitled for the, you know, Upnayan samskaras, right? So everywhere we find that they are removed from any as such.
In modern times and post-modern age, we have evidence to see that certain terms are used to women, like Antapur, we can find within the homes, and Asurya, Paschatya, something. Why would we? What can be the real meaning of these terms? Okay, literal meaning I understand. What would be the reasons why such terms are being used to women?
I mean, it's very simply that now they are becoming more subservient to the, you know, male part of the society. That's
Their interaction with society should be cut off.
Exactly, that is why. And gradually there is a notion which is coming into the society that women are, just now I just told you one thing, whenever you find the disputes, you find the disputes because of three things. I just told you Joru also, right? Wife, right? So later on this notion is coming into the society that wife is also a mode of, or exactly, right? So that has been, woman has been always considered as a property to you know, the men. So these kind of notions are coming into the society gradually, and once these kind of notions are coming to the society, definitely, you know, in the same ratio the status of women is getting down. Anything else? Right. So let us meet on Sunday for the discussion, and then we'll continue the classes in the next week. I think it is beginning from the Wednesday in the next week.